We're just getting ready to leave now. Should be on the road in a few minutes. The first part of our journey, of course, brought us onto the highway. Now, being that we live in Massachusetts, we used I-91 North to go north into Vermont. For the most part, there was nothing to report. Just an even 70 miles an hour the entire way, and some music playing in the background. I did say mostly nothing to report. And then, before we knew it, we were off the highway. Good riddance, if you ask me. While the Jeep is capable of highway speeds, we were doing 70 the entire way. It's definitely not its strong point. So I was glad to see the highway go. Then, after probably another 45 minutes of back roads in Vermont, we came to a dirt road, which led to the event's base camp area, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but after coming around one of the bends over a hill, all of a sudden you open up into this. Now, we were here, of course, way behind schedule due to starting off late and then having to stop at the RMV and then stopping at the grocery store. We got here near the end of when most people got here. So, finding a camping site was, of course, a challenge. For a couple of reasons. For starters, of course, most of the good spots were already taken and well packed. So we had to go on a little bit of an adventure to find a better camping solution. Now, there was woods camping, and there was also flat camping, which is what you just saw. And there was also overlook type camping. Sometimes finding a camping location turned into a small wheeling trip in and of itself. But there were people scattered amongst the woods in a couple different locations. But we eventually found a camping location, not in the woods and not on the flat ground. We ended up going way up on the top of the property and got one of the lookout locations, which actually turned out to be a very nice camping locations because we could wake up in the morning and see all of the other campers below us and watch the sunrise over, or where would be the sunrise over the small rolling mountains across the valley. So, it ended up working out nicely. And we ended up camping next to a couple from Virginia, and then there was a couple guys from Rhode Island right next on the other side of us. So, conversation was aplenty. That night was fairly quiet. We just set up camp, cooked ourselves our ravioli, and slept. The only thing that woke us up was, of course, the coyotes in the middle of the night. The next morning, I was up pretty early, which allowed me to, wander around and have a look to see what various types of vehicles had showed up and whatnot, and get a sense for how many people are actually here. It was a sold-out event, which means that there was 160 people and 40 vendors, I believe. Some of the more interesting rigs that showed up were a couple of Unimogs and a large 6x6 Russian military-looking vehicle, but there were plenty of Jeeps, plenty of Toyotas, ranging from FJ Cruisers to Land Cruisers, a few 4Runners. There was some Westfalia vans, of course. Boomer van was in attendance. I think by Saturday it was here. There was also a Ford Explorer But as you can see, the land that we were had the privilege of using was very beautiful. There was a stream that ran right through it, which made it interesting for people who were camped on the other side of it, of course, because they had to find a way to cross it. At one point, they had drug out a big tree and used it as a quick bridge to teeter-totter and balance across. So that was interesting. But it looked like everybody was here. Everybody, seemed like they were ready to have a good time as they trickled and woke up. Luckily, there was no rain on Friday besides the dew. There was a chance of rain every day, but it held out on Friday. While overcast, it stayed dry. Our breakfast that morning was fairly simple. Just some eggs over the cook stove. Nothing special. While eating breakfast, our conversation steered mostly to where we were going to go. Navigation was actually fairly simple. We were all provided with a link to a Dropbox where we were able to download all of the local town maps that surrounded Reading, Vermont, which is the town that the base camp, so to say, was located at. These town maps could then be uploaded into Avenza PDF maps, which is what you're looking at now, and they were all highlighted and marked and whatnot with all the class of roads, their ratings for green, red, and blue. The app could also track you, give you coordinates and whatnot. So that was fairly simple. We, however, also printed out all of the maps and put them into a large binder folder so we can have physical copies to look at anytime we want in case cells broke down or malfunctioned, however you like to say it, or we just wanted to be able to flip through pages or whatnot. Maybe we're a little bit old-fashioned for that, I don't know. But navigation was fairly simple because of it. After plotting our course, so to say, we figuratively set sail for the day. The pool at the Overland headquarters was open the entire trip, and there were, believe it or not, people who would get up in the morning and jump in. Most notably was the event organizer, Peter Vollers, who seemed to get up well before anybody and hopped right in. The first part of our day was pretty light. We just followed the dirt road out of Overland HQ, and after a slight mix-up about which direction we needed to go, we eventually found our first Class 4 road of the trip. If you're wondering, this is what a green Class 4 road would look like. Nothing too spectacular if you're looking for super technical stuff and whatnot, but still interesting nonetheless. Alright, we decided to pull off for a quick break here on our first full day out in the Vermont backcountry. Trails so far have been pretty light duty, but still pretty interesting, because I mean, we're traveling through just dirt roads and 2 tracks and whatnot out through the backwoods of Vermont. There was a little bit of mud. My Jeep is a bit muddy, but hey, we live in New England. That's what we get to deal with. Our first day, and especially the beginning part of our first day, was full of, or well, not full of, but trail meetups, so to say, were fairly common. As the first day there was a lot more people who didn't go out as far out as others, maybe because they're less familiar, maybe this was their first trip to doing this sort of thing. So there was a little bit of waiting around to get by each other. We're in a little bit of an interesting situation right now. We've had a meetup of sorts. We had a group coming back out at us, and we're coming down, and there's a group behind us following us. So we're gonna try and...
The other guys back all the way out?
Yeah, they backed all the way out.
Yeah, let's back out.
So we're gonna try and make something work. One of the points of interest we were able to make our way to on our first day was this Revolutionary War grave site. We stopped, paid a little bit of our respects, and then looked like there was a couple other groups who stopped to do the same thing. So we waited a few minutes for the traffic to clear out, and we picked our direction and continued on our way. Alright, we continue our first full day of Vermont Overlanded Rally. We're about to head into our first red section of a Class 4 road. So we had stopped a little bit to air down and get ourselves set up. We ended up catching up to a group of Jeeps and FJ Cruisers. So we let them go ahead a little bit, and we're about to, start our short red trail next. Initially, we actually had gone by the red section that we're aiming to. We ended up passing this little entrance by about 100 feet or so, but we just had to back up about 100 feet, and we were able to make our way back down it. Initially, this road actually was a blue, and then it turns into a red shortly thereafter. So, the first part of this road actually wasn't terribly difficult, but it was a step up from green, as you can see. Then in the distance, we noticed the taillights from the group that was ahead of us that we tried to let get space between us and them. As it turns out, a $40,000 4Runner wasn't equipped or fully capable of making it through the red section that we were coming upon. So we waited for a while for them to make their way through, and eventually they did. At this point, there wasn't a real easy way to turn around or whatnot, so once they got to this point, they were pretty much committed. So it took probably some winching. They had their high lift jacks out, and they did some stacking of rocks, but they were able to get through. We, however, had a much easier time than they did making our way down this red section of the trail. Not even worth a sneeze. Now, if you look in the top left of your screen, you can see the big thick lines that are running along the side of this Class 4 road. And this ended up actually being kind of a common sight on the side of these Class 4 roads. And what they are maple syrup lines. Just at the end of this road, which are almost two at this point, it opens up into a farm, and there was somebody running a maple syrup operation. So in the spring, when the sap is running out of the trees, they have large spaghetti-like or spiderweb-like networks of sugar maple trees that are all tapped and run down to these main lines here that then run down to the collection area, which they then take that sap in the spring or late spring, boil and make maple syrup into. So that's what you're seeing there. At this point, we're almost at the end of this trail. Just past these trees, it opened up into the farm, like I was just saying, and there was also the first cover bridge that we happened to come across. So we had taken some pictures there. If you want to see them, you can check us out on Facebook. The link is in the description. We also ended up stopping for lunch, and we stopped for fuel. And then we also actually ended up stopping at a local farmer's market just to check it out. And then we made it to our next section of trail. The next part of the first full day began with a green trail. We started this right after eating lunch, and we made a fuel stop, and we picked a fairly long, kind of a loop sort of trail. It's more or less looped back to where it started, and the reason we picked it is because it had 2 view spots marked on the map, so we decided to go see if we could check them out and see what we ended up finding. But of course, being that it was mostly green, it was fairly mundane. Here is one of the view spots that opens up on the map. Provides pretty good view for several miles of some low rolling hills or mountain in the distance. Then, of course, along our journeys, we also came across an old bridge, one of many. And then this trail also had one red section. So that is what this is right here. You're good. Then after that short, quick red section, it went back to just being green, nothing special. But we continued on to the second viewpoint. We ended up making back to camp pretty late, so we ended up cooking in the dark, and Friday for us happened to be taco night. So we cooked up some ground beef over our camp stove, made a fire, and had a few beers. Everybody else was partying pretty late into the night. There were many fires happening, and many a cheer and many a laugh. So that'll conclude this part of the video series. Be sure to stick around for part 2. You can click this annotation right here and it'll bring you right to it. It's already up and available on the channel. But make sure you give us a like, subscribe, check us out on Facebook, link is in the description. Leave us a comment, and no matter what, get out there and do something.
You made it. What do you have to say for yourself?
I'd like to thank my mama for giving birth to me, and then I'd also like to thank the Lord for putting those rocks right in that position.